Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. It's a beautiful cold morning down in Kampala, Uganda. But that shouldn't stop us from discussing whatever matters are available for us to discuss in as far as football is concerned. We'll be wrapping up talks all the UEFA Champions League semi-finals and get down into the thick of action in the UEFA Europa League as well as the UEFA Conference League, because as most of you do know, you do have one of your favorite teams down there in Chelsea Football Club. But before we get it all started, allow me to do the honors of just to test our, audience to make sure everything does align the way it does. But plenty of things for us to discuss in the aftermath of Arsenal being knocked out of the UEFA Champions League at the hands of Paris Saint-Germain yesterday. A beautiful, beautiful game of football that we did get to watch. Of course, it was commiserations for the Gunners and jubilations for Paris Saint-Germain there. But it is what it is. I thought the best team lost on the night, but I mean, that's what it was. For those of you that managed to follow yesterday's action, so we're going to be discussing that and more in as far as today's broadcast goes. So allow me. I think our audio is good. Now I'm just waiting for you guys to join the broadcast. And let's talk it all. Let's pray that we don't get any internet glitches or anything that troubles our broadcast. But plenty of things are for us to talk about today, and really, really looking forward to the conversation. I thank you so much to all those that were with us last night in the aftermath of that 2-1 loss to Arsenal. We did have an hour-long broadcast. I think it was about an hour and 17 minutes there so discussing the game, reviewing the game, talked about transfers, talked about Mikel Arteta and where Arsenal are in this moment and things in that line. So I'm waiting for you guys to join the broadcast so that we can get it all started, so that we can get today's conversation started, because there is plenty for us to discuss. And yeah, do join me on the broadcast. Let's discuss it all. Let's talk matters UEFA Champions League. Let's talk Europa League. Let's talk UEFA Conference League. For those of you that are just joining us, kindly like the broadcast. Kindly let me know where you're joining us from. Much appreciated for the love. But thank you to all those that were able to join us last night in that broadcast. I really appreciate the love that you did spread. I did appreciate the questions and comments that you did put forward that sort of broadened our discussion on the night. That was really, really good of you. So let's chat it all out and see what we do have in store today in as far as that, but what's to come in tonight. Of course, the expectation, I think Manchester United fans are in a very high-spirited mode. That goes without saying. Following that first leg result, we'll be talking about that. Tottenham Hotspurs have requested the Premier League to reschedule their game that was slated, I think, for May 18th or 17th to be moved, because they will have that as a final to play, possibly against Manchester United on May 21st in the UEFA Europa League. So, I mean, we're going to be talking all that and more. Bruno Fernandes is being targeted by the Saudi Pro League once again. It's not their first time. So really, plenty for us to talk about. So I'm waiting for you guys to join the broadcast so that we get the conversation going. I'm waiting for you guys to join the broadcasts as I share our link online. Sorry about that, but join the broadcast. Please join the broadcasts. Please join the broadcast. Let's discuss it all. In as far as there is to talk about. Anyways, let's start with the few that are here with us as we wait for others to join us. So we all know by now that it's Inter Milan that will face off with Paris Saint-Germain in the finals of this year's UEFA Champions League. I did mention last night, not accidentally but intentionally, that I do think that given what we've seen of PSG this season, they will go on to win that title. That's my expectation. That's my prediction. While I think Inter Milan are very decent side, having knocked out big teams on their way to the finals, including Barcelona on the semi-finals, 7-6 on aggregate. I do think that PSG, that young side of PSG, the Vitinhas, Chao Neves, Fabian Ruiz, not that Fabian Ruiz is really young, Ousmane Dembele, not that Ousmane Dembele is young, but Gianluigi Donnarumma, Achraf Hakimi, Willian Pacho, Marquinhos' experience, Nuno Mendes, Bradley Barcola, Kivica Kvaratskhelia, that team will really, really go on to lift silverware. But that's also based on the fact that some of the previous winners that we've had of the competition, that every time we've had the final being played at the Allianz Arena, it's been a new champion that goes on to win the title. And we did cite Chelsea in 2012. We did cite Nottingham Forest, I think in 1979. We did cite Dortmund in 1997, and we did cite, I think, Olympique Marseille for 1993. I hope I do not get the years mixed up there, but that's the expectation, and that's one of the bases that formulates my prediction that PSG will go on to win it. Speaking of yesterday's performance, I think Arsenal will be proud of their performance. They will be disappointed that, of course, they crashed out 3-1 on aggregate, even after losing home and away, a 0-0 at the Emirates Stadium and 2-1 at Parc de France. For those of you that do follow us adherently, it was a perfect score prediction in as far as our preview was concerned. For those of you that managed to watch it, and for those of you that followed us in yesterday's conversation in the morning hours for that live broadcast, so that is also there. So I think Arsenal had a very good performance. The best team lost on the night. That's what I felt. I thought their performance was good, but what really cost them was that final touch, the finishing in the final third. They lacked a striker. They had that goal opportunity that fell to Gabriel Martinelli in the 4th minute, thanks to a long throw in by Thomas Partey. Of course, Gianluigi Donnarumma saving that. Then they had another 3 minutes later, Martin Odegaard with the sumptuous strike. Gianluigi Donnarumma out there to save it. They had a chance around the 80th minute that fell to the toes of Bukayo Saka. I think a cross floated in by Ricardo Carafiori, but that was, flashed over the bar at close range. Then you had another opportunity earlier on in the 64th minute. Once again, Bukayo Saka testing, the waters, and Gianluigi Donnarumma, who I thought was the man of the match for me on the night, rising to the occasion to save that as well. So really, overall, I think it was an 8 out of 10 performance. And what really lacked was that final step to put the ball in the back of the net, which Arsenal failed at so many occasions. And that only goal in the 76th minute by Bukayo Saka turned out to be a mere consolation. And the reason as to why they will again have themselves to blame is that for both the 2 goals that they did concede, they could have done better. For example, in the 27th minute, when they conceded that goal against Fabian Ruiz, Declan Rice was a culprit in causing an unnecessary free kick in an almost forbidden area, because he did, lose a possession to Kivica Kvaratskhelia, went on to foul him, getting himself booked, and saw a free kick awarded against Arsenal. So the resultant free kick is floated in. Thomas Partey heads the ball back into a dangerous area instead of heading it, out for a corner kick. And Fabian Ruiz does latch onto that one, and he strikes the ball swiftly. It brushes the stomach or the tummy of William Saliba and hits into the back of the net. And it was 1-0 by the 27th minute against the run of play. I thought, of course, Arsenal really pressed high. They were winning balls in the right positions. They really kept PSG on the back foot for most of the opening 25 minutes and that kind of thing. But because they were playing so high up the pitch, they left themselves vulnerable at the back, and that was prone to happen. We did talk about that. We saw that in the 16th minute when Kivicha Kvaratskhelia went on to hit the upright in that missed opportunity for PSG. So really, a very, very beautiful game to watch, end-to-end attacking football. But like I said, Arsenal, for me, dominating that first half. Of course, once they went a goal down, you felt in a sort of couple of inches or knots or notches opportunities or key moments that they had managed to create. Could have is different, but it dominated the affairs half, although sort of started giving our possession to PSG, who I thought had a very good game plan. I think they knew it at the back of their minds that that Arsenal were going to dominate a possession, that they were going to be dominant with the ball, so it would fall upon them to choose the moments. Again, huge credit to PSG. I thought they defended really, really well. They had a very solid defensive performance because on any day against any other opponent, they could have really crumbled or against those many attacks from Arsenal. But they really stuck it in there. And then in the second half, once again, Arsenal started on the front foot, but still failed to get that early goal that could have given them the momentum that they needed until then they went on to concede. So the second half lacked, while Arsenal continued to dominate, it lacked clear-cut chances or opportunities until I think the 64th minute when Bukayo Saka forces Gianluigi Donnarumma into a save. So for the guys that are just joining us, kindly like the broadcast. Kindly let me know where you're joining us from. Leave me a comment down in the comment section. Let's have that engagement with you guys. So until that 64th minute, I did think there was any big chance between the restart until that moment. And then, of course, Arsenal go on to concede a penalty. It was a handball by Miles Lewis-Kelly. I thought the decision in itself was a bit harsh, given the context in which it was. It did happen. Miles Lewis-Kelly sort of turning half his body to the back of the opponent and facing his goal to try and block an attempt there. But then, of course, David Raya, that ball brushing his arm, and David Raya managed to save it. That incident, nobody had seen, not the linesman, not the referee, not even the PSG players, because there was no appeals for a penalty. But the video assistant referees were able to spot that out. Kudos to them for having a keen eye for detail and brought it to the alert of the referee, who, upon going to the monitor, it was a quick view and he returned to award the penalty. Once that penalty was awarded, we did see David Raya speak to his goalkeeping coach in Inak. And then, of course, Vitinha stepped up, but the resultant penalty was saved by David Raya. Just a couple of minutes later, then Arsenal collapsed. Again, I thought in another lapse of judgment, or Thomas Partey failing to clear that ball and losing possession to Ousmane Dembele, who provided the assist for Achraf Hakimi's, good strike that, was beyond the reach of David Raya. And there it was, 2-0 on the night. And then Bukayo Saka, of course, scores the other side in the 76th minute to make it 2-1, and then missing that golden opportunity in the 80th minute that could have turned the game on its head, possibly. But Arsenal, they will be proud that after 6 seasons out of the UEFA Champions League, for now the second season running, maybe they've gone a step higher. Last season they crashed out at the quarterfinals at the hands of Bayern Munich, but this season round they managed to make it to the semi-finals, crashing out at the hands of PSG. But while they hope to be a much better team next season, other teams will also be looking to improve. I think PSG will be a better team once again next season if they remain under Luis Enrique. Barcelona will probably be a much better team. Real Madrid could be a much better team. We do not know what will happen with Man City, with Liverpool, with Inter Milan or Juventus if they manage to qualify for the UEFA Champions League. So the story of next season will be quite probably different. But of course, Mikel Arteta, maybe rightly so, depending on which way you look at it, or sort of in a bit of a in an indifference of opinion. He's been getting the stick from Arsenal fans, from rival fans, and all that kind of thing in the assessment of what really transpired. But I thought there were a few comments that I could read for us on BBC Sport, which I thought could sort of define this. Our second season in a row in the competition that defines the biggest teams and careers and reaching semis. If you do not see Arsenal's progression, it's because you don't want to. As 7 regulars return, 4 out of 5 new starters, and back to being one of the best teams in Europe. That's what I see Mikel Arteta is doing with this team. That's Guillem Baleki on X. So I think that's that comment summarizes it on. But of course, Arsenal fans will be disappointed that it's another trophyless season for them. So it will be Inter Milan versus Bayern Munich. Sorry, it will be Inter Milan versus PSG at the Allianz Arena for the finals in Munich. Guys, allow us to proceed to the day's fixtures. Manchester United will be up in action today for the return leg against Athletic Bilbao in the UEFA Europa League semi-finals. Manchester United already have 3/4 of their body in the final following that impressive 3-0 victory. Following that 3-0 impressive victory at San Mamés last week on Thursday. Of course, Bruno Fernandes picking a brace in that one being a penalty, and then the other goal scored by Casemiro that, you know, gave United that advantage. They've been impressive this season as far as Europa League is concerned. And then, of course, Bodo Glimt will be up against Tottenham Hotspurs. That is there for the action. And then in the UEFA Conference League, Chelsea will be up against Jacadin in the return leg with their 4-1 goal advantage from the first leg. And then Fiorentina will be at home against Real Betis. So let's start at Manchester United, where prior to this fixture, news has broken that Al Hilal in the Saudi Pro League are interested in signing Bruno Fernandes. The Portuguese international does turn 31, I think, later this year, and he is of interest to Al Hilal, who are promising him a £1 million contract per week. So, I mean, that's a very, you know, juicy deal, especially when you're already in your 30s for a football player who vividly knows that unless you look to be a Gigi Buffon, a Cristiano Ronaldo, who are some of the outliers, a Luka Modric, that you only have maybe 3, 4, 5 years of still some prime level football or very top level football in your legs at that age. So, I mean, it could be tempting, but we all know that Bruno Fernandes is a crown jewel of Manchester United's project. Ruben Amorim speaks glowingly of him. We all know that Sir Jim Ratcliffe and the United's composition of leadership, that does include Omar Barreda, the CEO, look at Bruno Fernandes as a very, very crucial player to their project. But given Manchester United is a financial situation, I mean, we cannot really rule out anything, because think to yourself, if you're Manchester United and let's say a Saudi Pro League club came with a deal worth 70 to 100 million pounds for a player that does turn 31, I mean, it could really tempt you. It could really tempt you into thinking about the offer and eventually maybe taking it up for as long as the player is open to also moving. But also, as it stands, Bruno Fernandes is happy at Manchester United, did renew his contract I think last year. That contract takes him up to until June 2027 with an option to extend for a further 12 months. That would then, if exercise, takes it up to 2028. So he's happy at Manchester United. He's the club captain, arguably the biggest club in England by most measures, especially fan base and worldwide support, revenues, stadium, and that kind of thing. I know Liverpool fans will be quick to contest that argument on them being the biggest club in England, but it is what it is. So there's interest from Bruno Fernandes, who I think has really, really been immaculate this season. 19 goals across all competitions and 18 assists, 7 goals in the UEFA Europa League and 3 assists. That's a 10-goal involvement in 12 games that he's played. I think that's as good as performances do come, goal contributions I think he's been the standout player for Manchester United this season. When I was making out my Premier League team of the season, where I think he scored 8 goals and provided 9 assists, or 9 goals and 8 assists. Sorry if I mixed that up. And I did include him in my best 11 for the Premier League team of the season. Some people did disagree with me because of where United are. But just imagine, without his goal contributions in the Premier League, without those 8 goals and probably 7 assists, 9 assists, where would Manchester United be in the one in for as far as this Premier League season is concerned? I think Manchester United will be as good as relegated at this point in the season. So really, really, for me, an important player for that Manchester United side, and that's not up for debate. So yeah, 8 goals and 9 assists for the Portuguese international. So without that goal contribution, I do really get the feeling that Manchester United could have been uneasily a relegated side this season. Because of that performance, I did put him or include him in my Premier League team of the season. Then again, the other news are still out of Manchester United is, I mean, they're unbeaten. Okay, it's not news. It's simply a statement of fact. But they are unbeaten in the UEFA Europa League so far this season. The only team that is still unbeaten in European football as far as this stage is concerned, because we know in the semi-final, the final now of the UEFA Champions League, we know what teams could possibly make it to the final. And my prediction was that we will see an all-English final for the UEFA Europa League with, I can see Football Crazy. A sad man. Are you saying you are a sad man? Why are you sad? Football Crazy. Let me know. And because Arsenal lost. Oh, I mean, it's commiserations for us. I'm also an Arsenal fan, but we did lose. It does hurt, I must say. But again, we will agree that probably over 2 legs, the best team advanced to the finals. The most deserving team advanced, as PSG, reached their second final of the UEFA Champions League in history. Yeah, it does hurt, but it is what it is. But thank you for joining us, Football Crazy, and kindly consider, liking the podcast and also subscribing to the channel. So we are now discussing Manchester United's game tonight, and we're saying that they're still unbeaten in as far as the competition is concerned. And my prediction was that we will see an all-English final between Tottenham and Manchester United. That's if Tottenham do not squander their 3-1 advantage against Bodo Glimt tonight. So I do not expect any surprises on the side of Manchester United really in tonight's fixtures. Not that it is impossible to happen, because we've seen these things happen before, but in the Europa League, I do not remember. I think in about 134 or 35 times, a team that has won by 3-0 in the first leg, did they fail to advance to the finals. So with that fact in mind, I do think United have it all in their favor to go ahead and make advance to the finals. That will be at San Mamés on the 21st of May. Then secondly, Manchester United do have back Amadou Diallo in their squad. Of course, he did make, I think, the trip to San Mamés, and we did see him over the weekend feature against Brentford, as Manchester United lost by 4 goals to 3. He did score in that game. I think he scored Manchester United's 3rd goal, clean strike. So I think that is quite positive, because for me, I think he's one of the better players. He makes them really, really good every time he plays. Alejandro Garnacho had a very brilliant game over the weekend, so that is also, that was out there for everyone to see. I thought he had a really, really good game, despite United going on to lose by sub. I meant subscribing to the channel, Football Crazy, and in case you're wondering what I meant by sub. So, but if you have subscribed to the channel, much appreciated for the love and support, brother. Thank you so much. So, and then Manchester United, again, first of all, they do have the home advantage. They've been really good at home. Of course, they've had their own scares. We all remember what happened with Lyon at the quarterfinals, but eventually they managed to sort of crawl out their way out of that one, 5-4 on the night and 7-6 on aggregate. Then they are going to be facing up an Athletic Bilbao side that will be without four of their best players so far this season. One of them being O'Hine Sunset, who is arguably their best player this season, having a 20-goal contribution in 32 appearances, 17 goals across all competitions, 15 of them coming in the Spanish La Liga, and then 3 assists to his name. So they will miss out Sunset because he didn't return from injury early enough to be available for this particular fixture. Then we also know that Athletic Bilbao will be without Danny Vivian, who will be out through suspension because of that red card that he did suffer in the first leg. One of their very reliable defenders, and then of course the William brothers will also be out of action. They are not in the traveling squad through injury. That's Nico Williams and Inaki Williams. So 4 of their best players, Atletico Bilbao, will be out of tonight's action, which makes them lesser the opponent that they will be in terms of putting up a spirited comeback if it were to happen at Old Trafford. Then it also goes without saying that albeit they are the best defensive solidly side in the Spanish La Liga, United really put 3 past them, and that was for the first time this season at San Mamés. United were the first team to score 3 goals against Bilbao at San Mamés this season. Football Crazy says bye-bye. It's quite unfortunate and sad that you're leaving us early before we end the broadcast, but thank you for being with us for the time you are with us, and I hope you do join us and later on today and any time you may find time to join us. But thank you for subscribing to the channel if you have done so. Much appreciated for the love. So with those facts in mind, I do think that really I do not see a way through for Athletic Bilbao tonight. I do not think United will be complacent because they know that anything is possible. They'll put out their best team, but with Atletico Bilbao not having those good players, I think it will hurt their chances. But also they do not perform really well away from home. I think in their last 9 outings, they've only recorded 1 victory with a good number of draws in there. So that's across all competitions. So Bilbao are not very good away from home, and that also goes on to hurt their chances. So when you look at, with that said in mind, you do feel that really Manchester United have the advantage in this particular fixture. As far as head-to-head is concerned, they've only met 3 times in modern times, but they also did meet back, I think, in 1956, around there, around 1956, if memory serves me well. And Manchester United, actually, yes, it was 1956-57 in the European Cup. Bilbao won the first leg by 5-3, and Manchester United beat Bilbao 3-0 in the subsequent fixture, and Manchester United advanced. Or that's how Manchester United advanced to the next step of the European Cup. But in modern times, they did meet in that season of 2011-2012 when United crashed out of the UEFA Champions League. Then when they came to the round of 16 in the UEFA Europa League, they met with Athletic Bilbao that beat them home and away by 2-1 at San Mamés and by 3-2 at Old Trafford. All Manchester United's 3 goals in the tie were scored by Wayne Rooney, while Fernando Llorente scored the best 2 of those goals over the 2 legs for Bilbao, and then Oscar Di Marcos also scored 2 of those, and I think it was Ika Munain that scored the other goal for Athletic Bilbao. That was in 2012. Then when you look at the third encounter, that was the last week encounter that was at San Mamés. That was won by Manchester United. So it's 2 wins in modern times for Bilbao and 1 win for United. No draws so far recorded. Well, even with that history in mind, I still think United have the advantage being at home in front of their 70,000-seater stadium. Those fans will be, I think, their loudest. They know that their team is well within sight of glory. They will be looking to win this competition for the first time since 2017 when they last won it under the charges of Jose Mourinho when they beat up against Ajax. in the finals by 2 goals to 0. I keep saying Paul Pogba and Henry Mkhitaryan squad in that final. So quite impressive. So my expectation is that Manchester United will go on to win at this time. They really have a good record against against Spanish team. The expectation is that because Athletic Bilbao cannot afford to sit back because they already have a 3-0 deficit, and because the game will be that open, or the expectation is that it will be that open, then that's why I think Manchester United can go ahead and win it by 3 goals to 2, or the very least by 3-1. So for me, the odds are in the favor of Manchester United in whichever angle I look at it. I do not think United will be looking to rest any players because, I mean, in the Premier League, they are left with nothing to fight for. But here are the probable lineups that I would expect in this Manchester United side. Of course, Manchester United side do have their injuries to worry about. Joshua Zirkzee being one of those. Joshua Zirkzee being one of those. Mazraoui is a potential doubt for this one because he did suffer a knock, but you never know, he could be back. Then Matas Delit, we also him. I think he injured his hamstring in that defeat against Brentford. He had to be withdrawn and they brought in Harry Maguire at the time. Then Aiden Heaven is also out injured, as well as Diego Dalot, Lautaro Martinez with an anterior cruciate ligament injury, as well as Coily as some of the injury worries or concerns for Manchester United ahead of tonight's fixtures. So I do expect Andre Onana to return in goal at the expense of Altay Buendia, who was in goal over the weekend as they conceded 4. That's the second time he's been given a chance to play and they conceded 4. The first time, I think, in the Premier League was up against Newcastle at St. James's Park when United lost by 4 goals to 1. So we do expect Andre Onana in goal, Victor Lindelof, Harry Maguire, and Lenny Yoro in that back 3. Then Patrick Dogu, Luke Shaw as the wing backs. Then Casemiro alongside Manuel Ugarte. The challenge with having that double pivot of Manuel Ugarte and Casemiro, sometimes they take a bit of time to acclimatize or to grow into the game. Then Bruno Fernandes ahead of that double pair alongside Alejandro Garnacho and possibly Rasmus Højlund to lead the lines. So that's the expectation. But do not be surprised if the manager in Ruben Amorim chooses to start with Amadou Diallo in this one. I mean, in any case, he deserves the opportunity to start. I think he's one of Man United's very best as far as this season is concerned, but being troubled by injuries. Now, again, for Athletic Bilbao, I do not think Unai Simon will start in goal. I think they will go with their second choice goalkeeper, who has been a mainstay in the UEFA Europa League. His name is a bit of a difficult one for me to pronounce, so indulge me if I fall short on that. But then in their backline, Inigo Lekue, Aita Paredes, Alvarez, and Oscar Di Marcos. Oscar Di Marcos, I think, being one of the only players left in that Athletic Bilbao squad that was part and parcel of that Marcel Bielsa side that beat up against Manchester United back in 2012. And then Mikel Jure Giza, and then of course Ruiz Di Garaleta in midfield, Alexa Berenguer in that forward line, as well as Unai Gomez, Alvaro Jallo are there, and Maurone Sanadi. Yes, forgive my mispronunciation for some of those names, but it's Marouane Sanadi there to lead the attacks. So I really do not have any high hopes for Athletic Bilbao in this particular fixture. I remember in the first leg, my prediction had been a 2-1 victory for Athletic Bilbao, but as we all saw, they were hard done by that red card. Not to say that they were playing much better, but of course they had their opportunities in the opening 17 minutes, including an attempt by, I think, Inaki Williams. Yeah, so we'll wait to see. And then there was an attempt, I think, that was blocked by Victor Lindelof in that first leg. So on the side of, let's move on to Tottenham Hotspurs, who, by the way, have a 3-1 aggregate lead following that first leg victory against Bodo Glimt. Remember, to get here, Bodo Glimt knocked out Lazio. Lazio, the team that led the table of the UEFA Europa League at the group stages, and three of the teams that are in the semi-finals of this year's UEFA Europa League did finish within the top four of the league format, and that was none other than Manchester United, Tottenham Hotspur, Lazio, who have since been knocked out, and then Bodo Glimt, I think, was the only side that finished outside the top four in that league format. Bilbao were in that top four. So on the side of Tottenham Hotspur, they do not have so many injuries to worry about, but I think it's they have a few injuries to worry about, but I do not think that will really bother them that much, because Captain Hyun Min is injured. James Maddison with an ACL knee injury. Then this is Radu Dragic. I mean, some of us even forget Radu Dragic, a player that they signed not too far back. And then Lucas Bagval. So, anyways, but I still think that Tottenham is quite big enough to still field a very, very good team in today's fixture. They do have their favorite centre-back pairing in Mickey van de Ven and Christian Romero, and then you do have Destiny Udogie and alongside Pedro Porro in right back and left back respectively. Should Destiny Udogie not be chosen, it could be Dejad Space that gets to start there, but Guillermo Vicario is available in goal. Yuvi Bissouma and Pepe Matza alongside Rodrigo Bentancur in that a midfield of three. Then Richarlison, Dominic Solanke, and Brennan Johnson for the front three. That's the expectation. But again, do not be surprised if Dejan Kulusevski is given the nod to start at the expense of any of those, because for me, I do rate Dejan Kulusevski really, really highly. On the side of Bodo Glimt, Nikita Hykin in goal, Frederick Jovold there, Justin Gadesen, then Vlad Nelson, Frederick Jokan in the back four, then Sodefet, Jens Haig, and then Saltness. Saltness is the one that scored that only goal for Bodo Glimt in the first leg that turned out to be a mere consolation. And then Kasper, they do have Bloomberg, they do have Isak Mata in their forward lines. So that's for Bodo Glimt. I do expect Tottenham Hotspur, although they've had their crumbles in the UEFA Europa League, but overall they've been a very decent team. I remember them knocking out Eintracht Frankfurt at the quarter final stage, and for me, I did great Eintracht Frankfurt, having won, I think, the Europa League in 2022. I do rate them really, really highly. But that's that. Then briefly in the UEFA Conference League, Chelsea are up in action tonight. Like I said, against Jagaden, they do have a 4-1 lead on aggregate score in that tie. Goals a burst by Nicholas Jackson in the first leg coming off the bench, then a goal by Jordan Sancho, and I think the other, I seem to forget the other goal scorer for Chelsea on the night. But if you do remember, please put the name for me down in the comment section. But I do know that Jordan Sancho opened the scoring on the night for them. Yeah, the other was Noni Madueke. Yes, Noni Madueke was the other on target for Chelsea on the night as they won by 4-1. Chelsea are in very, very good form, despite losing their previous fixture at home in the UEFA Conference League. They lost by 2-1 at the quarterfinals. That's what I can tell you. But in the Premier League, they've been on fire. They've won their last 3 consecutive games, beating up against Everton, beating up against Fulham, and beating up against Liverpool by 3-1 over the weekend in a very, very good performance. Cole Palmer returning to the score sheet after a goal drought of 18 games. He did return to the score sheet thanks to that penalty that was awarded to Chelsea late on in the game. And I think that could spark his sort of good times at the tail end of the season. I did include Cole Palmer in my team of the season because with 15 goals to your name and 8 assists, for me, that's good form, even when you've had a goal drought, which many star players get to experience over the course of a season. Still about Chelsea, I mean, when you look at their side, they can choose to field a very strong team. But remember, they are trying to qualify for the UEFA Champions League. They want to finish within the top 5. So that means that even when they win the UEFA Conference League, they don't need to go and play in the UEFA Europa League next season. Although, for me, my feeling is that Chelsea should play in the UEFA League next season. My feeling was that United shouldn't qualify for the UEFA Champions League next season because, I mean, there's a lot that needs to be done. Because, I mean, finishing, let's say, 15th and 16th for Tottenham Hotspur and Manchester United in the Premier League, and then you qualify for the UEFA Champions League, you will need to do a lot in the summer to turn your fortunes going into next season, because that can be enormous responsibility. But also, it speaks, for me, with Chelsea, it speaks to readiness. Also at Manchester United, speaks to readiness of their project with a new manager and that kind of thing. But Chelsea, I don't know. Enzo Maresca is trying to do what he's trying to do what Pep Guardiola did to Phil Plum while during his 3 years at Bayern Munich, putting him in to play in the midfield. And we all remember that Phil Plum was one of the best right backs at the time. And as far as world football was concerned at the time when Pep Guardiola joined Bayern Munich, that was in 2013, because he was there between 2013 and 2016 before leaving to join Manchester City. So these days, Enzo Maresca plays Richie James in midfield in the UEFA Conference League alongside Keenan Dewsbury Hall in that midfield of 2. And then ahead of them, you do expect Cole Palmer, Pedro Neto, Jordan Sancho, or maybe even Noni Madueke to start ahead of Pedro Neto. And then Tyreek George is the one that started ahead of Nicholas Jackson in that game away to Jakarta. And then you had Joshua Akpong, and then you had Tosin Aderabio and Bernard Badiashile in that centre back, as well as Malo Gusto, Philippi Yakinson in goal for Chelsea. So there is that expectation really that Chelsea, but because Chelsea, like I said, are still in the fight for a place in the UEFA Champions League next season, do not be surprised if you see a much lesser team in terms of strength that they may feel. But I mean, that's to say they have the advantage, a 3-goal advantage in terms of aggregate score and that kind of thing. So I do expect Chelsea to advance to the finals regardless of what happens. While the other semi-final in the UEFA Conference League, I can see Habib Nasser has joined us. Habib Nasser, what do you think about Arteta? Let me give my thoughts in just a bit. Let me conclude on this UEFA Conference League semi-finals. The other fixture is between Fiorentina up against Real Betis. We all know Manchester United's Anthony is having a very wonderful launch spell with Real Betis. He did score a very, very brilliant goal over the weekend. Real Betis, under the charges of a very experienced manager in Manuel Pellegrini, I do think they may edge it and advance to the finals and meet Chelsea, because my prediction was that Chelsea and Real Betis will be the ones in the final, but they do have a slim 2-1 advantage before going to Fiorentina, who we all know has a Manchester United former goalkeeper in David De Gea. They do have Moise Kean in there. Easier Tech Insights with David says, I think Chelsea is very fortunate. I mean, you could say they are very fortunate, but they could say they create their own fortunes. I mean, you look at that Chelsea side and they invested more than £1 billion in their squad. it goes without saying that some of their signings are underperforming, and many of them are up for sale, are going into the summer, including Christopher Nkunku, who is being targeted by FC Bayern Munich, but in one way or the other, they create their fortune as much as they create their own mess as well when it comes to being impatient with managers. But then they will also argue that every time we sack the manager, whoever will replace them with, or regardless of the many changes, we end up winning silverware. So you could go ahead and say that. So, but thank you, David, for joining us in today's broadcast. Much appreciated for the comment there in your assessment of Chelsea's fortunes. Then, so I do think that Real Betis will edge Fiorentina, and that will be that. So, in terms of predictions, guys, should I gave my prediction for Manchester United. Tottenham Hotspurs, Bodo Glimt. I'm going for Tottenham Hotspurs to win 2-1. Then Chelsea at home against Jakaden, I do not think they will be as complacent as they were in the previous quarterfinals. I think they win this one at home, maybe by a 3-1 at home. That's the prediction. Then Fiorentina Betis, maybe a 1-1 draw, and then Betis advance. I mean, that's what I feel. But again, they're just predictions. So let's answer Nasa. What do you think about Mikel Arteta? What I think about Mikel Arteta, I'll say I'll date it to as far back as I'll put it this way: he's a good manager, and here is what I had to say prior to his appointment, or before we appointed him as manager. When Unai Emery gets sacked from Arsenal, and that was in around November 2019, and then we all remember Freddie Ljungberg took on as an interim until we appointed Mikel Arteta. Of course, at the time, given where we were, and I thought in my own perspective was that Unai Emery was dealt a bad hand, or was hurt by that particular decision, because what Arsenal tried to do was to do a quick fix when Arsene Wenger left. They wanted the manager that would come in and fix the team and get them competing really at their highest level. And he did that in his first season, although again Arsenal crumbled away in the later part of the season and failed to qualify for the UEFA Champions League, and they ended up finishing fifth. And then, of course, that horrible loss to Chelsea 4-1 in the finals of the UEFA Europa League in Baku, Azerbaijan. That did not look good on his CV. But overall, I felt that Arsenal were rushing him into wanting success with the kind of squad he had. I will remember that when he wanted to sign a winger, he wanted to sign Wilfred Zaha from Crystal Palace, and Raul Sanllehi opted to sign Nicolas Pepe at the time from Lille, I think. So for that deal that was worth about £72 million. So at that time, again, when we were in the market for managers, many of us we did look at Erik ten Hag, was still at Ajax at the time. We spoke of Massimiliano Allegri. There was conversation of Zinedine Zidane, who had left Real Madrid at the time because he left at the end of that 2018 season. Then there was a talk of Massimo Allegri. Then Diego Simeone was cited in that conversation. Of course, the English with their media slotted in there, Eddie Howe and the likes of Sean Dyche, which I thought was quite ridiculous, but that goes without saying. But Arsenal, of course, Edu Gaspar Daoud had already joined the club as a technical director, and then whatever the assessment was, they chose to go with Mikel Arteta, who we do understand had been interviewed earlier on prior to Unai Emery's appointment, because Unai Emery was a last-minute decision bring in by Raul Sanllehi at the time. So the decision came that they had appointed Mikel Arteta. Personally, I was disappointed because he was nowhere near in my top desires for who would be the next Arsenal manager. In fact, I'd fancied Luis Enrique in one of those. So because he was in part of that conversation, I think at the time we spoke of Luis Enrique, but then Mikel Arteta gets appointed. And I remember vividly his first press conference or interview. Sorry, it was the interview. When I listened to him speak, that's when I saw it. He spoke with a lot of conviction. He knew he did have the experience. He spoke about wanting to win the trust of the players and their confidence. And he spoke in precise words about how far down Arsenal had fallen in terms of competing with the big teams. And he talked about what Arsenal needed to rebuild, but also remaining competitive. And he said when he looked at the culture at the club, everything had really gone bad. He was honest with his assessment in that. And he then spoke about what the kind of things that he would look to improve, the non-negotiables, of course, respect being one of those. And as we came to know, time management, which later on cost the likes of Aubameyang their future at Arsenal, and that kind of thing. So I got sold in that moment, and I said I'll be behind him for as long as he continues to deliver on his promises, and we're going to the Arsenal rebuild. Now, he then goes on to buy himself much valuable time when he guides Arsenal to the triumph of the FA Cup in 2020 during COVID, beating Chelsea in the final, but on his way beating up against Man City, and then went on, I think, to beat Liverpool in the Community Shield, because Liverpool had won the Premier League title in 2020. So when the following season, that's for 2020-2021, he beat Liverpool in the Community Shield. So those results there and the FA Cup really bought him a good amount of time. He sold us on his project. The subsequent season, which is largely defined as the COVID season, another COVID season, things didn't go well for him. He again finished 8th with his team. At the time, I remember when he joined the team, he only signed, he did sign, what's his name? The defender from Flamengo. He's now playing at Monza. His name eludes me. Apologies. Pablo Mari. Yes, he signed Pablo Mari because he wanted a left-footed centre-back and that kind of thing. So his first season was bad. I remember a spell of about 10 games in which we only won one fixture, and that was beating Manchester United away from home, thanks to a penalty that was awarded by Mike Dean, which was quite unusual for a Mike Dean to award a penalty to Arsenal in a Manchester United tie. So Aubameyang scored that penalty, and that was the only fixture we won in 10. So we had that poor run of results, and the only advantage he had is that fans were not in the stadium, and so the sort of hitbacks that he was getting were kind of subtle to the moment, and he lived on until the following season. Of course, when the following season came, that's when he bought players like Gabriel Jesus, bought no, that's not the season, but he brought in the likes of Ben White, he brought in the likes of Aaron Ramsdale, Takahiro Tomiyasu. Those were some of the buys that they bought. That's for the 2021-2022 Premier League season. And we saw Arsenal go on an electric run of football, and they really played well. And they had hopes of qualifying for Europe, the UEFA Champions League, which I also thought we were not really ready for at the time. And eventually we crumbled still at the end of the season. We failed to win our matches, I think, in that run in, and we ended up finishing 5th. But that team was electric. Gabriel Martinelli, Emile Smith-Rowe, Bukayo Saka, Martin Odegaard. I mean, very, very good team. Granit Xhaka in that composition of team. I think at that time we had acquired Thomas Partey as well. So he goes on to build that kind of team, and he failed to sort of deliver what Arsenal fans would have desired the most, and that was qualifying for the UEFA Champions League. But he qualified for the UEFA Europa League, and that was progress. So he gave us more hope and more belief that given more time and resources, he could take the team to the next level. And the following season, that was the 2022-2023 season, he took Arsenal to the next level. Of course, we did crash out of the UEFA Europa League at the hands of Sporting Lisbon, who I thought were better over 2 legs. That Sporting Lisbon side that was under the charges of Ruben Amorim, who we all know now is at Manchester United. But during the course of those two fixtures, Arsenal lost two significant players in Takahiro Tomiyasu and William Saliba, which for me I thought cost them the Premier League title that season. I think even Thomas Partey, either his form or either he got injured or his form dipped at that opportune moment. Or in the next spell of games. And that's how Arsenal, who had led the Premier League table for the largest part of the season, I think for more than 200 days, ended up losing out the Premier League title to Man City. And then that spoke to the inexperience of the manager, in the lack of squad depth, our failure to rotate our players, and that kind of thing. But largely the inexperience of the team itself. We all know they were young players, but they really gave it a good fight, and they gave us belief. They ended up finishing, I think, second on the Premier League table with 85 points. I think, was it about there? So again, that was another good sign of progress, but also we qualified for the UEFA Champions League. That was really important because it meant more revenue coming through. I think at every end of the season, for most fans or Arsenal fans, we will agree that for every end of the season, we know what positions we are weak, we know where we need reinforcement. But the one thing that Arsenal failed to fix over the last two seasons, and we knew we needed to, was that striking line. And the rationale behind that is that because Arsenal have been scoring so many goals, they felt they didn't need a striker. And for me, my argument has always been that even when you're scoring so many goals, you always need a striker, because that striker could be the one that gives you the margin to decide games that, in other words, you wouldn't have won. So then we go into the 2023-2024 Premier League season. Once again, Arsenal were wonderful. They played very good football, especially in the second half of the season. That's after the Dubai camp. I think Arsenal went on a run of that. In that running of 19 games, Arsenal only lost one fixture, and that was losing to Aston Villa by 2-0 at home. And the reason as to why we lost that game, in my own opinion, is stubbornly, I do not know for whatever reason, Mikel Arteta refused to put Thomas Partey on the pitch. And I remember, I think he brought in Jorginho instead. So I thought he was responsible for that loss, but that is the loss that then cost Arsenal the Premier League title. Otherwise, they did not falter anywhere else. And I think that's the result that cost Arsenal the Premier League title. The season before that, there were draws to West Ham, 2-2. There were draws against Southampton, 3-3 at the Emirates Stadium in that crumble. But like I said, so the following season, where we finished with 89 points, and Man City win the trophy again at 91 points, Arsenal 89 points, a difference of just 2 points. That we all know that title went down the wire on the final day. Despite Arsenal winning, Man City also won their game on the other side and went on to be crowned champions. What cost Arsenal the title was that game against Aston Villa, nothing else. Had they won that fixture, we would be talking about a different, history of the club in that context. But also, again, the inexperience of the manager really showed, and that's where having a striker gives you the margin. That's where having a manager like Pep Guardiola gives you the margin. So we crumbled away, but not really crumble away. But that result against Aston Villa did really cost Arsenal. Then this season, and this is all to answer my opinion on Mikel Arteta, like Habib Nasser asks, is that this season, because the core of that Arsenal team that had competed for the previous two seasons and finishing favorably well in second place, they had played so many games, many of them without rest or without being rotated, really, which would give them a rest. That has come back to bite them. Martin Odegaard, Bukayo Saka, Gabriel Martinelli, William Saliba, Gabriel Magalhaes are some of the mainstays in that team, have all suffered injuries this season. Ben White, Takahiro Tomiyasu, inclusive in that component, they've all suffered significant injuries. Bukayo Saka, a hamstring that kept him out for 3 months. Martin Odegaard, an ankle injury that kept him out for 2 months. And then Ben White, and he had to undergo knee surgery. Of course, Gabriel Jesus, Also, he had just returned, got injured. Kai Havertz, hamstring injury. Gabriel Magalhaes, hamstring injury. So, and I've already said this, that I felt that players have played way too many games in the post-COVID era, because when we got done with COVID, for those of you that do remember, we played that 2020-2021 season, and after that, players went for the European Championships, that Euro 2020 that was played in 2021. So when it's played in 2021, we come back, they go play that, come back for the following season, start playing, and midway that season, in the aftermath of they play that competition, and then in 2022 we did have the World Cup in December, so that was a factor. So teams just broke off their leagues, went and played in the World Cup, came back. In fact, that was the time when people thought that Arsenal would crumble in the aftermath of the World Cup, because it would have faltered their momentum. But what really they lost was Gabriel Jesus to injury, because he got injured while with Brazil, and he had that knee injury. So they played so many games, and such injuries were bound to happen. And if you followed football enough, you must have observed the trend that long-term injuries have been quite many. The AOC to Rodri, Eder Militao, Dani Carvajal, all those players have suffered anterior cruciate ligament injuries. And then we've had so many players, Braut Erling Haaland, Kevin De Bruyne last season, players going out for long spells through injury. That speaks to the plenty of games played over that course. So because the core of that Arsenal team had played so many games, pretty much without good rotation, or because Arsenal's squad depth again was lacking in terms of quality. Sometimes, in some cases, we had the numbers because we had the likes of Rhys Nelson and that kind of thing. But in terms of core quality, that cost them. So we've had the injuries this season, and we've seen that ever since Martin Odegaard returned back from injury, he's not been the same player. David says, don't you think that a number of Arsenal players have reached their potential limits? I wouldn't want to think so. I want to think that there's more that they can still offer. But again, because we've not been, look, let's reflect on the example of Pep Guardiola. Pep Guardiola, at the time when he had the biggest squad in the Premier League of the highest quality, you'd have a Phil Foden at the top of his game, in his prime, doing everything right, be rested for the next 2 games, and just being either not brought in or brought in for 20 minutes. So that was squad rotation. You had Riyad Mahrez, all those players, regardless of what their form was, João Cancelo, Ilkay Gundogan, Kevin De Bruyne, regardless of what their form was, even including Braut Erling Haaland, being rotated out of the team. Why? Because he knows that these players, you need to give them that bit of rest, so that when the most important time of the season comes, which is usually within the last 15, 14 games, when Man City go on that unbeaten run, that's when he needs his best players the most. And then if you observe, Mikel Arteta tried to copy something from Pep Guardiola last season. For the first half of the season, you felt that Arsenal played with a bit of low intensity, low energy, as if they were reserving their energy for the bigger, climax of the season. And then in the second half of the season, they switched things up. That's something Pep Guardiola often does with his team. For the first half of the season, usually they will play to win, really. Of course, they dominate possession, but when you look at their pace and overall feeling around that environment, you feel that this is not the prime Man City that we do know about. Then in the second half of the season, they switch things up. So in terms of reaching full potential, I do not think that most of those players have reached their full potential. But the questions are on the manager in Mikel Arteta, whether he is the one to sort of guide Arsenal to major titles, and that's the Premier League and the UEFA Champions League. But his inexperience over time is what has spoken the most. Has there been progress? Without a doubt, without a doubt. But we do not want this Arsenal project to end up like that Tottenham Hotspur project that was built by Mauricio Pochettino. And I remember making the argument that Mauricio Pochettino is a very good manager. He's just not a winner. He's just not a winner because they did everything right at Tottenham Hotspur. You remember that season of 2015-2016, I think, when Leicester City went on to win the Premier League title. They won it, I think, with a margin of 10 points at 81 points. Arsenal were in second place at 71 points. But by Arsenal's wrongdoings that season, Tottenham Hotspur scrambled away. They had an opportunity to push Leicester for that Premier League title. Then in 2019, they lost 2-0 in the finals of the UEFA Champions League to Liverpool. Now, of course, Liverpool were the better team. You could argue that. But over time, in that spell, you felt that Mauricio Pochettino built a very good team, but they were just not winning anything. We do not want Arsenal to be that. And again, for me, Mikel Arteta, it's due to his inexperience. But overall, he's a very good manager. He's a very good manager. That's my opinion about him. Will he be the one to guide Arsenal to major honors? He only has next season to show that he is capable of doing it. Otherwise, he will simply be a very good manager who has not yet won anything. And I get the feeling that Arsenal may be better next season. I do not think. I think they will look to build a squad that has more quality and depth. Because for those of you that do remember, when we were previewing again this season, I said I gave my reasons as to why I thought Arsenal would not win the Premier League, and one of them was a lack of a potent replacement for Bukayo Saka. We've seen that when he was out injured, Arsenal really suffered. We spoke about Martin Odegaard not having a direct primary replacement, and we saw that Arsenal struggled to create chances without him. We spoke about the lack of a striker. We've seen that's been part of the difference at this team this season, and that's why maybe they're interested in signing Alexander Isak. So I do think that next season out, they'll go out and sign a striker. They'll go out and sign a winger. We all know that they're bringing in a midfielder or two. For me, I think they need two midfielders, a replacement for Martin Odegaard, or a substitute for him, or a competitor for him, and a holding midfielder they also need. And then I do think they need two wingers, a replacement for Bukayo Saka, and that's why I spoke about Ryan Cherki last night, or Alex Baina for a backup, and then a right winger, because there's speculation that Leandro Trossard could leave the club at the end of the season. So they need a better player there to give Gabriel Martinelli a stiff competition. So I do not think those players have really hit their prime. I think there's more Bukayo Saka has to offer. I think there's more that Martin Odegaard could offer. I think there's more that Kai Havertz and Gabriel Martinelli can offer. William Saliba and Gabriel Magalhaes, that defensive partnership, I think there's still more that they can offer, as well as Julian Timber, as well as Maz Luis Kelly, as well as Ricardo Carafiori, Ben White. I think they still have a lot to offer. I think David Raya is still a very good goalkeeper. That midfield role will be very critical because, again, even when we can fault Thomas Partey for some of those errors last night or mistakes, you do still need him in that squad, in addition to whoever you may bring in for a holding midfielder. And then, of course, that will mean that you do have Mikel Merino, Kai Havertz be switched back to midfield. That's if Arsenal get a striker. And by the way, before Gabriel Jesus got injured, I thought Arsenal needed two strikers. And I thought they should let go of Gabriel Jesus and then retain, and then get two strikers. And I was looking at a free agent like Jonathan David to come in and then sign another striker in their prime, because I think it's time for Gabriel Jesus to leave the club. But now he's out injured 10 months. He doesn't return until the season has started, which means you can not really sell him. So for me, I think for the players that no longer have anything to offer to Arsenal is Alexander Zinchenko. Unfortunately, he has to leave the club. Gabriel Jesus, for me, has to leave the club. I think his performances are wanting. Takahiro Tomiyasu, very good player, but his injury record has proved out to be horrible. I think we need to let him go in terms of assessing how valuable our squad is. Then I do think, for me, I would retain Jakub Kivio at all costs. because what happens when you let go of Jakub Kivior is still you're going to go out there and look for a left-footed centre back, even when you have Ricardo Carafiori, or you'll be looking to sign another defender. And again, last night we spoke about Arsenal's desire to sign Dinhausen, and also to sign either Dinhausen or what's his name? His name slips me. That's the defender at Sevilla. And then we spoke about Jorel Hato at Ajax. So, David, you say, okay, your message has been retracted. I do not know what you're trying to say, but your message has been retracted. I hope you bring it back and we engage on it. But so I think, for me, I think some of this, we all know Neto is going to leave. Raheem Sterling will go back to Chelsea. We need a goalkeeper, and that's why they're interested in Joan Garcia. But in terms of outfielded players, if they were all fit, Takahiro Tomiyasu, Gabriel Jesus, Zichenko, of course, we know Nuno Tavares will be signed to Lazio permanently. That one has been out on loan. Reece Nelson should leave the club when he comes back from his loan spell from Fulham. There are reports that Fulham could look to retain him, although his injury record is not good. Zichenko, we've talked about Zichenko. Then Albert Sambi Lokonga, who has been out on loan to Sevilla. I do not think they will retain him. That one should be let go of. Fabio Vieira, almost forgotten in the eyes of many Arsenal fans, has been out at FC Porto. He's not had the best of seasons, but he's not had the worst season as well. It's been a fair season, but we need to count our losses and let that one go. And that's why we lacked in depth, because we let go of Eddie Nketiah, Emil Smith-Rowe, Fabio Vieira, Albert Sambi Lokonga. All those players leave without replacing them, and we suffered in terms of squad depth, especially in the advanced positions. So we saw that despite the surging of Ethan Nwaneri on the scene. So Arsenal need to let go of so many players. And I think I did a video of about 14 or 11 players that should be leaving Arsenal, or that will be leaving Arsenal this summer. Leandro Trossard, I'll look for me to let him go and sign a better player, better, and I would look at the players like Eberechi Eze. I'd look to players like Antoine Semenyo. I mean, in terms of building a squad, we're talking about squad players, because all those players that I've mentioned up to until this stage of the season, they've all been squad players at Arsenal. So I'd look to let those go. We all know Jorginho is leaving to join Flamengo at the end of the season. That's pretty much out there for the world to know. Thomas Partey, they're still discussing. For me, I think we should retain him as a squad player, not as our number one starter in that midfield role, but as a squad player. So that's it on the assessment of Arsenal. I hope that answers your question, Habib Nasser, on what I think about Mikel Arteta. I think he's a very good manager. I'm not sure he's a winner. He needs to prove me wrong, and he only has next season for a do-over to tell his bosses that he is indeed a winner, or to tell the rest of the world that yes, I can build for you a team, a good team, but I'm not just a winner yet, because this is my first managerial role. He could as well communicate that. So we'll wait to see. But then it also begs the question of who do you replace him with? But that's a question for at the end of the season. Should he come out trophyless at the end of it, even after building that squad? So then on Arsenal's potential, whether players have reached their potential limits, all the players that are cited that should be leaving the club are the players that I think have really reached their potential. If Arteta had to go today, which coaches would you look at? Number one, I think I would look at Luis Enrique at PSG. For me, I've always thought well about him. The time I had my doubts about him was when I didn't really know him well. That was when Barcelona picked him out of Celta Vigo, and he proved us wrong. He won 2 Spanish La Liga titles. So for me, top of that list would be Luis Enrique, who is currently at PSG. Number two, I mean, forgive me if these names do not come quickly to mind in terms of managers out there. because there's not a lot good many managers out there. Xabi Alonso, I think he's still wanting, although he's a very good manager. When I look at Arsenal and I assess it, I do not think that he would be the most suitable of candidates, but he would be a consideration. Carlo Ancelotti, I would think about him, even though he's going to join the Brazil national team. What does he bring you? He brings you calmness, lots of experience. Of course, it doesn't guarantee triumph for a league title, because I've always thought he's not a very good league winner, although he's won a couple of those, including last season at Real Madrid, including winning, I think, one in France, while at PSG, then one at Chelsea in 2010. That team that had Salmon Kalou, Didier Drogba, Marouda, Michel Ballack, and the likes. So then, which other manager would I think about? Thiago Motta, no. Zinedine Zidane, still. There's something that we never got told about Zinedine Zidane, but I think there's more to the man than we really think of. But for me, it would be, I think those would be my top four. Those would be my top four in this particular order: Luis Enrique, Carlo Ancelotti, Xabi Alonso, and maybe Zinedine Zidane. Those would be my potentials. If you have any other names in mind, you can suggest them in the comment section. But when I look around, you're not going to go for Ernesto Valverde. I do not think he does fits. I don't think he fits the profile. You cannot go for Conceição, who was formerly at FC Porto. I mean, in any case, got sacked at AC Milan. Last I checked. There are not so many good managers when I look around. When I really look around, that are in their prime that you would look onto, unless you could persuade Pep Guardiola out of Man City, maybe he would come even in second place or even above Luis Enrique. If you could persuade him out of Manchester City, which I do not think is the case. I do not think he would switch Man City for Arsenal in the Premier League, unless you could persuade Hans Flick to leave Barcelona. I've always thought highly of Hans Flick ever since what he did with Bayern Munich. That was in 2019. In 2020, winning the treble. Yes, the other name that I'd forgotten. Sorry about this, David. Is Julian Nagelsmann, who is with the German national team at the moment. I think there is a good manager in Julian Nagelsmann. I do not think he was given the best of ample time at Bayern Munich to show his prowesses. Pep Guardiola or persuade Jurgen Klopp? I'll persuade Pep Guardiola. Looking at the squad that we have of players and just a few additions that it needs for them to become a winner, I'll choose Pep Guardiola any day over Jurgen Klopp. But then Jurgen Klopp, I mean, if you cannot get Pep Guardiola, Jurgen Klopp would be a good manager. However, I do not think he's looking to get back in action, especially in Premier League football. He's the head of football at Red Bull. He does head football at those Red Bull group of teams. So because Jurgen, and by the way, Jurgen Klopp has been mentioned in some circles in connecting him to Real Madrid, although again the preference, like I said, for Real Madrid is Xabi Alonso. But let's wait and see. You never know. Florentino Perez is one of those good businessmen, who can persuade any manager into joining Real Madrid. Never mind that they appointed what was his name? The former West Ham manager, as well as a Spain national team. That was Julian Lopetegui. He convinced him to join them before the Spanish World Cup in 2018, which they were poor at. But you say, I agree with Jurgen Nagelsmann, and Enrique makes so much sense. So for me, those would be the big options that I would consider: Luis Enrique, Jurgen Nagelsmann, Pep Guardiola. Pep Guardiola would be a dream, but I do not think it will happen. Jurgen Klopp, same applies. Those two fall in the same bracket. and then so Nagelsmann, Enrique, Carlo Ancelotti, that bucket. I think that's where Arsenal would look in case they want to replace Mikel Arteta. As far as that debate would go in terms of wanting to replace him. But like I keep saying, if things do not happen for him next season, unfortunately, we'll be sorry for him. We'll be indeed really very sorry for him. But by any measure of standards, for a manager that had not managed any club, later on a small club, his first job being Arsenal, I think he's done a tremendous job. I must comment that he's done a tremendous job. Has he gotten so many things wrong? Yes, he's gotten so many things wrong in terms of the players they've signed. That's of course in partnership with his former sporting director in Edu Gaspar Down. In terms of the way he works with his squad, in terms of when he rotates players, he's gotten so many things wrong. But that's because he's a novice. He's a manager in his first role. And I believe if he left Arsenal today and went to another team, he would do so much more with those, with wherever he may go. And by the way, on the radar, Man City would prefer Mikel Arteta as a replacement for Pep Guardiola at Manchester City. So that conversation is there, and he's very capable. He's shown that he's capable. He's just not clinched that piece of silverware. Anyway, guys, it's 1 hour and 20 minutes into today's broadcast. Allow me to wrap it here and wish you guys the rest of a good day. Do enjoy your work. Let's meet again later in the day as we speak Man United. I think prior to kickoff, we'll look to do a broadcast if the situation does permit us to discuss what team news will be out there, the starting lineups, and much more, or any other news that may be making the rounds. I will be looking to do a session on transfers very soon, so I'll keep you updated on when that comes up, because remember the transfer window is going to open on the 1st of June, because it will be open for about 9 days between June 1st and June 9th for the teams that are going to be playing. It's not exclusive for the teams that will be playing in the FIFA Club World Cup, but it will be open from the 1st of June to 9th, and then it will be closed and then reopened on the 16th of June. But remember, the FIFA Club World Cup that is going to be played in the United States is the cause of that adjustment as far as the transfer window is concerned. 32 teams participating. Chelsea will be out there. I think Man City will be out there. Real Madrid will be out there. Borussia Dortmund, Mamelodi Sundowns, Al Ahly will be some of the teams that will be out there in that competition of the FIFA Club World Cup. I think Flamengo will be one of those teams. So many teams from across the world. So that competition does start later this year in June. So I'll be keeping you abreast on the transfer news. We'll get to speak more of that. We did speak about it last time, but we'll do a transfer roundup for some of your biggest teams, and we'll speak once again about those biggest names. So I'll be letting you know. Otherwise, allow me to wrap it here for today and wish you a wonderful rest of the day. But thank you for those that have managed to be with us. Special shout out to you, David, to Habib Nasser, to Football Crazy, and everybody that was with us last night in the aftermath of that particular fixture against Arsenal that we reviewed for about an hour or so. So thank you so much for the love and support. Bye-bye.